The building's made up of a range of different engineered wood products. So engineered products are things that we make rather than coming from the tree directly. So we make things, so this one is what we call LVL, which is laminated veneer lumber. So it's like unpeeling a tree, laminating it together to make all the strips. So when you look at it, you can see all the glue lines there. So some of the other products, one you can look up and see is cross-laminated timber, CLT. So this is like, we take large pieces of wood and laminate them in opposing directions and make a panel product. And the stairs are actually made out of CLT, so they've exposed the grain of the wood. So that's sort of the structural products of the wood of the building, but obviously we don't just do structural products, it does appearance grade. So over my shoulder is the lovely ceiling. So that tells a story of the radiata pine genome and the lights of Matariki, but it's a fantastic thing, and the closer you get to it, the better it looks. So that wood does fill in appearance grade products. We've used wood over there as an appearance issue as well. The balustrade is wood again. And the building is connected together with steel, which forms an important role. The steel helps provide us some of that earthquake resistance, while the light timber frame reduces the earthquake forces. So it's a truly stunning building that's been designed entirely with computers, built with computers, and it's all gone together, and this is a place I like to be in a big earthquake.
And I hear there's a wonderful story about the timber lift shaft, much to the surprise of the lift engineers.
Yes, that entire building is made out of wood, including the lift shaft, and that's made out of cross-laminated timber as well. Interestingly, you might normally make lift shafts that are concrete. The tolerances of concrete are far bigger than they are for timber, so that tolerance of that are sort of plus or minus a millimetre. So the lift guys will actually love that because it's straight and true and accurate, so it makes it far easier to fit a lift into a timber lift shaft.
Another feature I love is the glass, which is obviously thermally very efficient, but has those wonderful tree patterns on it.
Yeah, well, obviously there's an aesthetic function to make the building look good, but it also reduces the amount of sunlight coming into the building, because with a lot of glass you get a lot of sunlight, so you can get a lot of heating. And as you pointed out, it does look like trees, and when you stand here looking out, we can see through the building, through the glass, into the forest. So we've got a good connection with nature. You know, this stuff came from trees, and we can actually see the trees.
And the entrance is very striking with the three peaked roofs, and there's obviously symbolism behind those three peaked roofs.
Yes, they represent the three hapu that own this land, and on the inside of the three triangles are patterns that were gifted to us by the hapu themselves, and they were actually made. They weren't carved with traditional stuff, they were actually carved with a computer controlled machine as well. So we've connected some old technology to some new technology.
And over the short time, a year and a half or so that you've been in the building, how are people responding?
Very well. People like it. It's a nice quiet building. People like to touch it. It's a beautiful looking building. It's a warm building, you know, warm aesthetically. It's just something that people like to be here. And every visitor that we have is overwhelmed by what the building looks like and does.
And indeed, this is a public space down below, and that's a cafe open to the public. So you're getting a good flow of members of the public through here.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of people come up to the cafeteria and obviously have a cup of coffee and look at our building, but also connect with us. We've got a museum over the far side, so we're helping to connect people with what we do in terms of wood and other products around wood.
This is Scion's pilot plant for fibre and pulp processing. So we built that in the late 80s. So that was absolutely fundamental to help New Zealand's pulp and paper industry to refine and get their processes right around pulping, around fibre production.
But this is also a plant with a bright new future because of the opportunities opening up in the biomaterials and bioeconomy. So what might be some of the products or materials that Scion hopes will come to the fore over, say, the next 5 or 10 years in this biomaterials area?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting area. So let's 5 to 10 years. Let's talk, say, 2030. What could we see? So a tree today already is the source of about 5,000 products we use today. So just keep that in mind. And then another to keep in mind, anything you do today or anything you use today made from fossil fuels could be made from a tree tomorrow. So I think that describes what a biorefinery could be, what a big purpose it could have.
And I know that tannin and shoes figure in this, and I'm very keen to hear about that, please.
Well, so I would like to give your viewers an example. Tannin is an old product, has been used for thousands of years. What we have here is the only shoe in the world tanned with New Zealand radiata pine, made in New Zealand, made in Dunedin, and we can see now the interest that catches people's imagination. You can imagine not just the product tannin. Yes, you can sell that, but completely new industries can rally around a biorefinery, like here, making of shoes, making of other leather products. Beautifully looking, made here with our sustainability story in hand.
This is the Xylarium, this wonderful collection you have of samples of wood from around the world, almost a century old, 1926, 8,300 specimens from around New Zealand and the world. This is the history that you're building on with the circular bioeconomy. And I know we've attracted some attention overseas for the potential here, and I was wondering if you could tell me what people are spotting.
Yeah, well, I think the key things is that initially they came down and held their global summit here in Rotorua because they wanted an Indigenous people's perspective on the circular economy, which is the work they do. And when they came down and visited Scion, the concept of the circular bioeconomy really came to the fore, that that what we currently make out of petrochemicals we can make from trees. And the thinking and the research that we're doing here, they identified as world leading. They weren't seeing it to the level that we're doing it. In addition, when they talked about the Indigenous peoples aspect, they said, wow, the whole circular economy and the environment fits this Te Ao Maori worldview, or the other way round if you like. And their perspective was this was a unique value proposition that New Zealand has, unique in the world, and it is where the world's heading.
And attracting attention from more corporate interests as well, keen to develop.
That's right. I think forestry is often thought of as a very long-term business and quite conservative, but in very recent times, I would like to think partly due to our narrative, but also the climate crisis and other factors have really started to get these larger companies wanting to come and talk to us and have that future thinking explored.
Today, when you walk in, you come down the drive, you see all these carvings that were carved at Scion. So you'll come a long way when you can come into an organisation like Scion, a Crown Research Institute, that was probably quite separated from the community, that now has master carvers based on site belonging to the hapu doing that mahi, and those are the fruits of some of that mahi. And the one you see at the entranceway was a lot of our science and our technology helping pull that together. But the story goes on, and we have a hapu operations manager, Hunga Whakahaere, who's based permanently in there. So it's not fundamentally it's not just around giving us names and doing blessings and all of those things. It's a really authentic relationship that will continue to be built on.
Tell me about some of the key benefits that are flowing from this bringing together of Te Ao Māori and Mātauranga Māori and Western science within Scion.
We talk around our broad purpose of Scion, oranga ngahere, prosperity from trees. And every way you sort of look at the ngahere, Māori are intrinsically linked into it. So I think fundamentally, it's really exciting. And I think Scion's well placed because we're here based in Rotorua, a centre, epicentre for Māoridom. Not the be all and end all, but certainly central. And we're in a sector that's all about forestry and it's all about Māori. So I think it's really, but when we talk around oranga ngahere, it's not around making money from trees. Yes, fundamentally, there's the pine forests in Māori are a big part of that, but it's actually all of the other things that you can do from having forest in your environment.
Drawing on your experience in the kiwi fruit industry and then in Callaghan Innovation, How do you think these new relationships, these deepening relationships between Sion and Tangata Whenua will develop over the next, say, 10 years?
Yeah, look, we're seeing a lot of leadership from Māoridom now in the kiwifruit industry. We're not only, because it's not just about money, it's about jobs, it's about the economy, it's about communities. So, you know, if we start to thinking around, why don't we take all the good things that we've learned and we create a model of recloaking the appropriate land in Aotearoa Indigenous nurseries. Sion can bring the technology, the science to the table. Māori can bring the mātauranga and the traditional knowledge, as well as fundamentally the ownership of Indigenous rights and proprietary and growing, and really use that as a platform, because then there's jobs. And the fundamental, the more we start to build up these communities, but then you start talking around good for the environment, good for the soul, good for the people. You know, you've seen the fantastic building of Te Whare Nui or Tū Te Ata. That building, while it's a fantastic architectural design at the front end, without that Māori story intertwined in it, it's relatively shallow. And so, you know, there's an opportunity for Māori to be at the front end of scaling up, you know, that type of building throughout Aotearoa and playing a key role. And then you start to think around these carvings that are based here, and you start to think around, well, we're going to use 3D printing to provide a replica of Tū Te Ata that will sit in that whare. Well, mātauranga doesn't provide that. Mātauranga provides the intricacies and the detail and the knowledge, and our science and technology brings that together. So you don't want to lose the authenticity, but bringing that together, and I think that's the real excitement. So I think, Rod, the future's really bright for an organisation with Callaghan first and foremost to build strong relationships with our mana whenua, which we're doing, and then scale up those initiatives far and wide across the country.